Welcome to the Postgame. I'm Michael Brooks with super producer Matt Leck, chief economist David Griscom, super producer David Slavic is on the Discord with the great Alex Pareene, who is good to go.
Yeah, I am. I'm ready to party.
Yeah. I said post-game, and Pareene was like, can I go downstairs? Post-game! Fucking Modelo! Fucking got permission to leave the apartment, drink Modelo, and talk about why Republicans are evil. Fucking score. With my friends.
Yeah. This is, yeah. I just want to say, I'm an I working from home, a father of a toddler, and I do not go out on weeknights or weekend nights. So this podcast is my going out.
I love it. I mean, we do have a pretty fun time here.
Yeah.
But you still, I mean,
right.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Is that really what happens?
Yeah.
When you have kids, that really is it.
I don't know. I mean, like after he's in bed by 8 and I'm watching TV.
I actually overheard a conversation. One of the most obnoxious. I only heard sort of snippets of it. It was like at a restaurant, but it was literally like a parent telling of a young kid telling someone else, like she was sort of the woman who didn't have a kid was kind of, being like, I don't know, I'm just a little bit worried about, my life totally shrinking. And the other one is basically just like, oh no, it's totally doable. What you do is you get a babysitter for this, you get a fucking nanny. It's like, oh, okay, right. So if you have a sort of like your income is like the GDP of Panama,
especially
you can basically still do everything, because
especially in New York. The secret is, if you want to have a kid and not have it affect your life, you have to live by your parents, and they have to be willing to watch the kid. That's the only way it works.
Is it so? Are you?
My parents are back home in Minnesota, and so
the other party's parents are not.
They're not in New York either. So, but yeah. So if you want, when I was a kid, my mom actually finished college after I was born because my grandma looked after me, and if I wanted to go out and go see a show, or if we wanted to go out together, my partner and I, we'd have to pay someone. So that's the thing. Like, you got to be rich in New York if you don't live with your family to have a kid.
Well, the condom sales in the TMBS universe just had another spike. That was thanks, Alex.
You're
welcome.
Isn't it fun that we get to argue for social programs that might make that easier, just as there's widespread recognition that, like, the resources of this planet we need to be a lot carefuler with? I don't know.
Yeah, Alex. Actually, I think though that like the like liberal politics of like we could deal with climate change if only people would stop having families is pretty toxic.
Yeah, I think it's toxic, but I think it's going to be acted upon by policymakers.
You mean like when we globalize?
I feel like it's already in the back
policy?
I feel like it's already in the back of people's minds that are controlling our economy, that like climate change and feeding people and like not having like austerity, right? And climate change. I feel like those calculations are already sort of being made.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, cold-blooded economists are definitely like they're running the math and they're deciding based on their like utterly amoral assumptions about there are people planning terrible strategies for adapting.
Yeah, the next 30, 40 years.
Well, that was right. I mean, that was like be a complete idiot about climate. Then there are definitely technocratic climate adoption models that don't include a human dimension.
Right.
I mean, yes, it's not as simple. I mean, that's another reason why the whole like, do you accept the science or not is such a dumb frame for that issue, because it's like, first of all, I'm sorry, like, rubes and idiots denying the science is not the core of the problem. It's a manifestation of the problem.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be thinking that if there wasn't a massive amount of propaganda and industry effort to cloud the issue. And secondly, like, yeah, there's I mean, I wouldn't put him in like a completely awful category. I think he's done some really good things, but like Jerry Brown probably gets the science and is acting as proactively as any modern politician in a capitalist context can, and he doesn't. There's not a big justice part of his equation.
Yeah, and I like you look. God, Jerry Brown's actually a really good example because you're right. He accepts it more than almost any other politician. But even so, he's still not really acting the way you would want someone to act if they actually believed this was an urgent crisis.
He says it.
Yeah.
He's like, this is existential. This is like no one else, but I guess besides Al Gore, but nobody else in frontline politics uses that language. And then he's basically like, you know, we're going to do great and aggressive things on car fleets and on, you know, energy transition.
Yeah.
And we're still going to give away every fracking permit pretty much.
Yeah.
That's asked of us, which is kind of extraordinary. I mean, it's sort of like if you keep smoking, you're going to die like next month. And my prescription is just, have a few less. I mean, it's pretty bizarre. I do want let's continue on this theme. This was Mitch McConnell with John Dickerson, and it kind of fuses together just like this raw power and lying you're talking about. And the awkwardness of and just the utter rarity of it getting called out.
Notion that the Senate is somehow broken over this is simply inaccurate.
But, Mr. Leader, those things have happened, but this is of a different order. And Democrats are pointing not only to the way this was handled, but in the history of partisanship on the Supreme Court, your decision to block Merrick Garland is something they see as having kicked off a new stage in the partisanship associated with Supreme Court nominees.
Yeah, they don't know much history. You have to go back to 1880 to find the last time a Senate controlled by a different party from the president confirmed a Supreme Court justice to a vacancy created in the middle of a presidential election. They also conveniently forgotten that Joe Biden said in 1992, when he was chairman of the Judiciary Committee, the Democrats control the Senate, Republican in the White House. If a vacancy occurred, they wouldn't fill it. They also conveniently forgot that Chuck Schumer and Harry Reid, 18 months before the end of Bush 43, said if a Supreme Court vacancy occurred, they wouldn't fill it. Talk about hypocrisy.
Right. But, Mr. Leader, I don't think that's right. In 1956, Eisenhower nominated Brennan. The 84th Congress was a Democrat-controlled. And also on the Biden rule, Joe Biden was talking in the abstract. There was no nominee. No nominee was blocked. And he said to not have the nomination come up before the election, but that it could come up after the election. And so what Democrats say when they hear you doing this is they say he's creating new rules to essentially do what he wants to do. And as you've written in your book, The Long Game, when you do that, it actually hurts democracy.
Yeah, well, that's not at all what happened, John. You're completely misconstruing what happened. What I gave you is the history of this. I know the history of this. I've spent a lot of time on this throughout my career. What I did was entirely consistent with what the history of the Senate's been in that situation going back to 1880.
Well, I think the 1956 example, and also in 1968, later in the election cycle, when a Democratic president put somebody forward, the Republican leader worked with him to get that person a hearing and get him towards the Supreme Court, which is not something that you did. A vote at the time.
Then there was a Democrat in the White House and a Democratic Senate.
But the Republican leader at the time tried to help the Democratic president.
John, you are not listening to me. The history is exactly as I told you.
Well, we have a disagreement about the history, but I greatly appreciate you being with us here today, Mr. Leader. Thanks so much.
I want to say something about that because that was okay. It's rare. We were sort of mentioning this earlier, but John Dickerson rarely, for anyone in his position, has some understanding of the actual history that he can bring to the conversation, which American political news hosts rarely do. He brings it up. He challenges him. If this had been, just to use the only example of another country whose political media I'm familiar with, a British news show.
Oh, that would have been brutal.
He would not have said, we'll agree to disagree and gone to commercial. Yeah. He would have kept asking until he got an actual answer. And he would never have got an actual answer because Mitch McConnell only has canned and rehearsed answers because all American political figures know you only need canned and rehearsed answers to go on TV. But so, like, like, cheers to John Dickerson for actually contradicting him. But how do you just give it up after? Like, how do you just be like, well, we really appreciate you talking the history with me, but we got to go.
Really appreciate you holding to your blatant lies.
Yeah.
And also in like an extremely unpleasant manner.
Yes.
I mean, maybe we have to get a montage together of. I mean, he became a character of himself, but just of Jeremy Paxman, just like grilling people, like just as a useful contrast. Yeah.
My English friends are like, oh, like Paxman, like here's why we're sick of him, or he's a parody. But like, we don't need everyone on TV to be Paxman, but we need at least 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah, right. We need a little Paxman. Let's
need some of them to act like that sometimes.
It's annoying because the closest thing we have is probably Jake Tapper, right?
Yeah, he's the closest we have, and that's
that resting
awful.
bitch face of his. Oy. All right, let's take a call. Maybe we could find some Paxman, but let's take a call. You're calling from a 719 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Mike with the Brett Kavanaugh carpool team.
Mike, how you doing?
Hey, man, it was good meeting you up in New York.
Oh, yeah, pleasure meeting you, man.
Absolutely, yeah. Mike from Austin, Texas. I love the show, and thanks for being on here, Pareene. Just wanted to talk real quick about this past weekend. I got arrested doing some non-violent civil disobedience down here in Austin.
Awesome.
Just wanted to basically run through that. You know, after the confirmation of Judge Kavanaugh, there was a woman-led protest at the City Hall here in Austin, and we basically marched directly over towards the Austin City Limits Music Festival going on, and shut down a bridge. And
awesome.
So the busiest bridge in town, we shut it down for almost 3 hours, right next to ACL. You know, we had 14 of us that got arrested and spent the night in jail on Saturday. There was a Muslim woman, there was a trans woman of color, there was a mother of 2 trans women, there was a 17-year-old March for Our Lives activist in a wheelchair. All of them were survivors. And so we made it on Yahoo, ABC
we got
News, Canadian News.
Oh, great. We have an image of this.
Check your Twitter DMs. I sent you a couple pictures. And then I also, I'll shoot you over a tweet to show you the aerial footage. But
awesome.
Yeah, basically just wanted to say, the whole point behind it for me is first off as a cisgender white male. I just wanted to point that out because, I think the whole point is to be an ally. The rapper Misone, he got arrested in D.C. this week too. He made a really good video on Now This talking about it, recognizing toxic masculinity and how that's been, the status quo for men, especially white men, for centuries, and that there's, a 90% chance that you added to it in ways that you probably didn't even realize. I think one of the big takeaways from the experience was dealing with a lot of the finger wagging from even like Democratic leadership in Texas, mostly men. We got called professional organizers
super
and whatnot.
Insulting.
I think there's just it's pretty funny. But I think that the whole point though is that it's time to escalate. I've done countless protests since Trump got elected, marches and rallies, but it's time for a diversity of tactics, including nonviolent civil disobedience. Big tip to anybody who does this: don't read the comments. the 3 most comments or common responses that I saw were, get a job, which is pretty funny.
Yep.
What about emergencies? That's the one that always comes up.
That's the big concern troll one right there. Yep.
Oh, it's hilarious because
in fact, it is an emergency. Like you're responding to emergencies.
There was an ambulance, and we let him through.
Right.
There's the answer. Question asked and question answered.
Yeah.
And it was probably easier for the ambulance to get across than traffic on Lamar.
No, seriously.
Right?
Like honestly,
save somebody's life.
Say it again.
You guys saved somebody's life.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, they actually were called to the bridge because people thought that the shutdown was due to some type of emergency, and so it was kind of a false alarm. But at the same time, though, the other one was you don't make allies out of people sitting in traffic, and so the folks that were in this area of town were obviously going to the most popular music festival, and so I'm sorry if we delayed anybody from getting to Metallica on time. And so I wanted to throw out a quote real quick from one of the guys who got arrested with me, Jesse. He wrote this. He said, Trump relies on the illusion of conformity to increase the sense of powerlessness among the general population so that they're more easily to comply with the ruling party's acts of violence and repression. Breaking the law like this is a simple and relatively harmless way to be seen, to send a message to like-minded folks and anyone else that we do not consent to what is happening. And if the powers that be expect us to blindly follow and not dissent, they have another thing coming. I think a lot of my calculus behind jumping in this is just thinking about the fact that, since 2008, Democrats have been bringing, Benjamin Dixon tweeted this out, they've been bringing a casserole to a gunfight. I think that was a pretty good way of putting it. And then lastly, I just wanted to throw out there that our protests inspired students at the University of Texas today to escalate their tactics. There were hundreds of students that set up a human blockade along the busiest walkway on campus called the Speedway, mostly sexual assault survivors, and they were chanting. There was quoted in the Daily Texan that the rally organizer that helped rally it, she said that, forcing students on the street to walk around the protests on their way to class, she said they wanted to be inconvenient because sexual assault is inconvenient. And so, three of the bridge protesters that led the charge were asked to speak, and then also the legendary civil rights activist Dolores Huerta showed up. So it was pretty awesome. Just wanted to share that experience and then encourage all of the leftist best nation out there to step up and get arrested.
Thanks for the call, man. That's awesome. You're calling from a 760 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael. It's Kentucky Fried Comrade. How you doing, bud?
I'm fighting a cold, but I'm good. Good to be hearing you. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm actually dealing with probably a stomach flu situation myself. I got a few things right now that I just want to really quickly kind of rapid fire go through.
Okay.
One, I want to say Alex Pareene, you're awesome. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm glad to see you on the show and just you got good takes, buddy.
Thanks, man.
I want to give a shout out to, I know he was just on the phone, but Mike from Texas, he's on the TMBS Discord.
Shout out.
He's a really fun guy to talk to.
Nation.
I'm a little bit annoyed right now because I'm suspended from Twitter for 7 days for threatening. No. I threatened gamers. That's a big mistake everybody makes. Don't do that.
What did you do? Did you just issue a general threat to gamers?
I was just asking questions. Michael.
Nice.
But the last thing I want to say, and this is the last thing I want to say, I've seen a lot of people, and I've talked to a lot of people both on the Discord and in other places and other formats who are really distressed about the results of the Kavanaugh outcome and about American politics in general and all that stuff. And it's definitely rational to feel that way. But at the same time, take mental care of yourself, take your mental health seriously and really investigate that stuff.
Take it extremely
and as a practical
seriously.
Thing.
That cannot be underlined enough.
As a practical thing, one organization I donate money to regularly, it's the National Network of Abortion Funds. They help women who are in any types of situation where they don't have easy access to, reproductive health services. And that could be as simple as they just don't live close enough or don't have access in one way, shape, or form.
Right.
You can give money to them. They are a really fantastic organization. If there's one thing I can underline out of this is do that.
Tweet out.
Oh, sorry.
Nothing. I was thinking of how you could get the website to people, and I was going to say tweet it out, but you cannot.
Yeah, you.
I was going to say tweet it at me. I'll retweet it.
You just want to rub it in, don't you, Michael? You just want to rub it in
because you needed to threaten gamers. We can't promote this important cause.
I'll DM it to you on Discord. I'll DM it to you on Discord.
We'll
but,
make sure. And also
thanks, Michael, for reminding me of the pain.
No problem. Let's also try to get that in the show notes too. Thanks, man.
Later, man.
Okay. All right, let's take one more call. You're calling from a 518 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael.
Hey,
how are you doing?
Dave from Jamaica. So well. How are you? How are you, Dave from Jamaica?
Yeah, I won't lie. A little depressed. I think the climate news plus everything this week is like, how do we end capitalism in 12 years? So we can live as a species is a tricky question.
I'm going to throw to Alex.
You got any tips?
Well, I have a plan.
Yeah. Alex, how do we end capitalism in 12 years so as to survive as a species? And I want to just, let me see if I have my board up, please. Alex, go ahead.
Step one is... vote.
Call your representatives.
Yeah. Call your representatives
call
and say
Chuck Schumer.
Hey, I would like the planet not to end just as much as you, but there's other things that need to happen, and you certainly can't expect me to ask Joe Manchin to help with that. If I tell Joe Manchin that we want to survive as a species, he might get upset at the fact as a Republican. Anyways, I have to go take a sauna. I have to go talk to my imaginary friends. They're much more polite than you young prick. What do you know about Marines? All right, Alex, seriously, 12 years to end capitalism. Knock it out for the TMBS nation. Sorry?
12 years.
That is his topic.
No, it's like 12 years because we're on a time schedule.
Yeah, we're on a time schedule.
There's a deadline now. There wasn't when Marx was writing, there wasn't a deadline. You know, right. He was like, "It's gonna happen," but like it might. You know, there wasn't.
Marx would be like, "It would be fucking great if this could happen in a somewhat timely way."
Yeah.
And then the Intergovernmental Committee on Climate Change by the UN said, "Actually, you need to do this shit."
Nationalization. I mean, just mass nationalization, and I don't know. I mean, like, we're just gonna have to build towards. Like, just, we're going to have to nationalize the shit out of so many things.
We need to seize the means of pollution.
We need to seize the means of pollution. Yes. I mean, Dave, I don't know, man. I don't know.
That's the thing that kind of has me like, oh, shit, because, like, not to be, I don't want to bring, as Kenny rightly talked about, the mental health stuff, but for me, this is the type of stuff that kind of had me not even able to do my work properly when I was going to work. Because, like, I can't think of a scenario where we avoid mass species dying out under a
already happening.
Thing.
Yeah, the nice thing.
I can't.
The good news is that's already happening, and we're still, sitting around here laughing about other things. So, life goes on.
Right. Exactly. What was Matt and I were talking the other day about, like, we're literally like bathing, like we're like in some acid ocean together, like floating on some type of like makeshift paramilitary like bodysuits. And it's just like, hey Matt, can you play that Jimmy Dore clip again? That was pretty funny. I'll go see if we could scavenge together some rodents for dinner. I mean, I think like though that this, and I know that this dissatisfies some people, but you have to you literally need to choose some, like, you need to learn from the Republicans and have some reality creation about this stuff, because you have to live and adopt a perspective that there's a pathway here, and there are some things we could do. I mean,
and things are always horrible.
And like, here are things. If the Democrats take the Congress to, I think that remotely comes close to solving this problem, of course not. But I do know that even in any scenario, it is like a precondition to even the slightest possibility of doing it. So, yeah, like the voting does matter. The protests do matter. I think also with climate, I mean, I think it's like capitalism is fundamentally antithetical to dealing with climate. And in the short run, you know, sometimes you actually should read like the business utopian press to remind yourself of how totally delusional they are, but also occasionally be like, oh, well, there's a ton of like solar panels being installed in India and that's cut their emissions a little bit. Like,
well, you know, what's depressing is that when you look at the news, like when you look at the report, when you look at what the experts say, like the cost for fixing this 12 years ago was not that large.
Right.
And what that means now is that the cost is immense, but it also is like just a thing that will require a lot of money and resources.
Right.
So that's possible. And theoretically, an authoritarian state like China can completely reorient its entire economy around.
They're doing it.
Like to
China is actually
to
making
eliminate
big steps.
emissions. Yeah,
they are.
And you know, like if you want to talk about the realistic electoral shit you can do here, it's going to have to be a massive, massive carbon tax that is also socially just.
Right.
That is also
That's
like
it.
we use it
Yep.
we use the massive, massive carbon tax to like just as a giant fucking battle axe, and then we use the proceeds not to be revenue neutral or whatever the fuck,
right,
but to like give back to people to actually like make our country more just.
It should be a commons dividend. It should be like basically you're polluting. All of this is just giant commons theft.
Yeah.
And we tax the hell out of you to gradually, as fast as possible, reduce and eliminate that activity. And then, and then we use the proceeds of it for everything from, you know, things that obviously we already need, like universal health care, but also, you know, upgrading car fleets, investing massively in public infrastructure, and all the other things that we know we need to do to, you know, design walkable and all these other, you know, ways of basically just getting around. I mean, I think actually that is, if you reduce it to a policy step, some types of, I agree with that. A massive carbon tax, which is designed as emissions elimination fused with just wealth reclaiming and redistribution.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. Griscom, you want to say something?
I just want to say, you know, it's not all bad. Some of the effects of climate change are really going to open up a lot of new areas for wine growing. Burgundy wine is actually supposed to become a lot better, and the harvest will be much more fruitful. So at least we'll have something to sip on as we face the end of the world.
Yeah. I don't know if that helps, Dave. Dave literally hung up.
I don't think we helped Dave.
No, we did not help Dave. I'm sorry, Dave.
I'm sorry, Dave.
Sorry. No, I thought we gave a great policy proposal. And then Griscom was like, well, that's obviously not going to happen, so consider the wine.
Get drunk.
You were like, it was this sort of very, it was a kind of postmodern Ecclesiastes, you know, where it's like there's a season for like.
There's a season for everything.
Yeah, there's a season for everything. There's a season for solving the crisis, and there's a season for realizing that we're totally doomed, but there might be a decent wine harvest.
You know, enjoy your long summers. And
well, I mean, that's the problem, right? Like, how do you balance being scientifically real and then conveying to people that like you're totally fucked? In which case, I actually think that it's a very rational response to be like, I should probably enjoy.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, so this is like the, you know, with what, you know, your mental health and the news cycle and all that. Like, it's true that, you know, you have a responsibility to sort of know what's going on, but like, obsessively following everything to the point where it makes you not feel well isn't helping. That's not
actually
making.
Probably we could probably measure that it's literally not helping.
Yes,
it's
blocking
exactly. Avenues to action. Possibly.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and actually, like the thing getting out and protesting with your comrades and getting arrested, that, like...
See how great he felt?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mike felt great because he went out and did something to fight these motherfuckers and stand for something that's right. There's energy. There's momentum in that.
Yeah. So don't just look at Twitter all day and feel bad.
I mean, that's another reason. I mean, I think that's another. If I'm even to sort of self-diagnose, I mean, there's a lot of reasons that I care about Brazil and like Lula, and I love that it's become like part of my persona that I'm a Lula stan. But I think there's also something to that like, here's a guy who's literally a political prisoner right now in today's age, and the message that he conveys to the public through every available means is like even in the short term, like even if I die, we are still going to win this battle. I mean, there's a tremendous energy to that I think people do need to learn from, no matter how daunting. And yes, on another level, like China's doing some shit. They're still way behind, and I'm sure their strategy is still going to be. I mean, they're also like strip mining Africa.
Well, that's
but
the
like
thing.
like they're also engaging in like this neo-colonial conflict with the United States and France and Africa, which is like the sort of last untapped bioregion of exploitation. And also the Saudis and the Emirates are in Africa buying up land as literal food security backups as they realize that they're going to run out of, arable land and water.
So, some governments are taking it seriously.
Right. Some governments. Exactly. Actually, let's touch on this for a second.
Oh my god!
Because last week there was a very bizarre story. Had you ever heard of Jamal Khashoggi before?
No, I mean I felt like the name was sort of familiar, but I don't think I was that familiar with him.
I wasn't that. I knew who he was, but I wasn't particularly familiar with him. But I remember watching him on Al Jazeera like a year ago or 6 months ago or so, and like you could watch the thing and say, okay, he's probably pissing off the Crown Prince because the Crown Prince is a horrific, autocratic, spoiled little brat who, aspires to even, Saudi monarchy is ruthless and dictatorial, but there's still some sort of sense of a certain type of give and take in their context. And this guy wants to get rid of that. Yeah. So, okay, you can imagine that pissed him off. But like his critique was super within the like, it was a friendly critique.
Yeah.
From what I've seen, it was never like we need to get rid of the monarchy.
No,
this kid doesn't know what the fuck he's doing.
The sort of critique you make when you know it's within the bounds of acceptable, like critique, basically.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Or so you think,
or so you thought at the time.
You have Trump sitting there, probably like literally. I'm sorry, I don't want to complete the image of him jerking off to like, but literally Trump is like sitting there being like, they killed a guy in their own embassy. Oh my God. That kid is so cool. Trump has like his little like, it's like MBS, and the North Korean guy is just like, oh my God. He had a murder team sent to an embassy to kill a journalist. So cool.
I wonder if they like me.
Yeah, I wonder if he likes me. Do you think he thinks I'm cool? So basically this guy went into a embassy in Istanbul to get divorce papers so he could remarry in Turkey, and he hasn't been seen since. And the Turkish police have said they think he was murdered inside the compound, and I don't know what their theory of what happened to his body is. That's like the Turkish line.
There's like apparently a security camera footage of a car, maybe? Is that
I think
there
is a ton of security footage. I don't know how much has been released yet. The Saudis are saying the completely implausible, like, he came and he left.
Spontaneous human combustion.
Yeah, just like, we don't know. We don't know. So Thomas Friedman, who, if you recall, a couple weeks ago, Matt Taibbi was in here, and we did a read of Thomas Friedman's Arab Spring Saudi style. Where he talked about how MBS was the great reformer and so on. And he's been sending increasingly like neurotic tweets. Like, hey, dude, not cool to murder a journalist.
Or it's like they're not picking up the phone, and he's like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. Just want to make sure you haven't murdered anyone
Here through the
that I care about. I mean,
you murdered a Washington Post columnist. That's not cool. Of course, the message is incredibly powerful that a thug would send, right? Which is like, if I will murder a prominent international American connected journalist in an embassy in another country, what the fuck do you think I'm going to do to you, grassroots activist with a WhatsApp? And all of the credit that this bastard got for letting women drive happened at the same time. He's literally imprisoning.
He was imprisoning all of the fucking activists. He would it was insane.
Yeah. It's called triangulation.
Yeah.
This is Thomas L. Friedman. Let's just read just a little bit of this. Just praying for Jamal Khashoggi. Saudi Arabia stands accused of killing him. If it did, it will be a disaster for the regime of Mohammed bin Salman. Like,
yeah.
You come into the room right now, young man. You don't kill Washington Post columnists at embassies. Last November 7th, I wrote a column about the new Saudi crown prince, Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and ended this way. As a veteran Saudi journalist remarked to me of MBS, this guy saved Saudi Arabia from a slow death, but he needs to broaden his base. It's good that he's freeing the House of Saud of the influence of the clergy, but he's not allowing any second opinion of his political and economic decisions. Now, I want you to guess, Alex, who that quote might be by, and who he might be actually throwing under the bus by literally the giving that graph of his time scale.
I mean, do you think the quote was maybe by the guy who might have been dismembered in the consulate? Is that?
I don't think that the Saudi journalist, who is also a friend, would mind if I identified him now.
Oh my god.
His name was Jamal Khashoggi.
I don't think he would mind now if I identified him criticizing.
I don't think he would mind after being murdered in an embassy for saying the most anodyne comments imaginable.
Yeah. Boy.
Jamal had come to my office a few days earlier for a long talk about Saudi Arabia at MBS. My views on Saudi Arabia are my own, but Jamal had a big impact on them. He admitted the inside of government. He understood that the perfect was never on the menu there. You had to work with what you had, including a hit squad that would fly to Istanbul to kill you while you got divorce papers. No, that's my addition. He loved his country and wanted to see it succeed, and he believed that MBS could shake things up and make needed radical reforms. But he also believed that MBS needed a lot of coaching. Because he had a dark side and was too isolated from a small ruling circle.
Oh. It seems like that.
Am I being uncharitable that he's basically totally throwing the guy under the bus in his like you should not have murdered him column?
Well, so if there's a world in which the Saudi line is that we didn't murder him, but if they're like holding him, Tom Friedman being like, here's all these other criticisms he gave
on the off chance if he's being in a holding pen in Jeddah. Here's another thing he said that will piss that little lunatic off.
Like maybe they're just detaining him, but also he said the Crown Prince has a dark side, and that's a problem.
They were literally going to release him tomorrow.
Then they
synchronize the embarrassment.
Someone ran in with a printout of Friedman's column.
Look at what Thomas Friedman is saying.
I think it just goes to like
Dad, I am killing him.
It just goes to like complete like lack of moral imagination of these people that Friedman is like, this could be the guy who could really get some reforms done. And on the other hand, he has a dark side and kills his opponents. Like the dark.
I do like that. That's a great. Like it's not like, I'm not a perfectionist, but I like how it's like, this guy's pretty good. Maybe he does some shady deals on the side. Maybe he's known to be like, but it's like, great reformer, also a mass murderer on the make.
Yeah,
a dark side.
Yeah, maybe you pull back on the great reformer part too.
Yeah,
well, a reformer.
Right, it's still in the column. It's still in the graph.
I like how Friedman, who's just spent like the past few months just standing for MBS all across the media,
everybody has.
Is now
Zuckerberg,
acting like he's the only one who saw it coming. Like he's like,
I
was always worried about his dark side.
It's actually it's much more shameless for him to be like. like, well, like we all knew he had to work on this dark side thing. It's like, I don't remember that part. I don't remember that part of your other column.
Yeah, I didn't see that in it's winter in Saudi Arabia, but it's actually spring because this kid's so fucking awesome because he has his iPhone fully updated or whatever other bullshit you were peddling a couple months ago, you asshole. All right, we're going to play an edition of Guess the Pundit.
Oh, boy.
Matt knows the answer. The contestants will be you, myself, and David Griscom. Matt, will you read us the question, and then we will go we'll start with David Griscom and go from there.
Yeah, this darling of bad takes said this about Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh is older than I am, and it would be inconceivable for anyone of my generation to think of an incident that took place in high school as constituting sexual harassment in the way it's now meant. It was barely a thing in the workplace in that era.
All right, I'm guessing.
None of those seem right.
Yeah, I was going to say those are all credible guesses.
Is it Barry Weiss, Megan McArdle, or Ann Coulter?
Ooh, that is I actually do have a theory here, but that's formidable competition.
I would have known this one. I caught this one in the wild.
Yeah, I think you would. All right, who are we start? Are we starting with Griscom?
I guess I'm going to have to. This has the kind of counterintuitive take that I know Megan McArdle likes, but I'm going to have to go with Ann Coulter.
Ann Coulter. All right, so you're basically just going with.
I'm going with age.
It's a terrible quote. There's an age dimension.
I'm not sure Brett Kavanaugh is older than Ann Coulter. I'm actually legitimately not sure Brett Kavanaugh is older than Ann Coulter.
I have no idea how old Ann Coulter is.
But
that's legit reasoning. All right, Alex Pareene, guess the pundit.
It's actually if not for that, I was thinking about the age thing because that sounds like Richard Cohen, and it's very much a Richard Cohen-y sort of statement.
Yes.
There used to be no such thing as sexual harassment. It just didn't exist.
You used to be able to walk by the Diamond District and say, "Hey, why are Negroes around here?" That was just the way it was.
I think I know.
By the way, I like Richard Pryor. Sorry.
I think I know the answer. If you wanted to guess first, I think I know the answer.
Okay. My strong instincts here are Barry Weiss because Barry Weiss is on the come up. She's trash. This could be, I could see an extended chapter like this in her upcoming book, as well as a 5-hour podcast with Sam Harris, and somehow that looped into an attack on Palestinians. But Barry Weiss is a little bit, she's a very mediocre mind. She's a little bit more snappy in her statements. This has a sort of wooden, boring quality. Mm-hmm. It's sort of both relentlessly boring and counterintuitive. So that also takes out Ann Coulter because Ann Coulter would be more of hey, as long as this guy will waterboard, 3-year-old Guatemalans, I don't care.
Ann Coulter would have made it sound more like a Rodney Dangerfield joke or something.
Right.
It would have had more of a rhythm to it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And she would also go for the extravagantly horrible point. Yeah. So I think the fusion, and also I think there might be a little bit of an age gap here too between I think Barry Weiss is 30 or so, and McArdle's probably late 30s, early 40s.
Yeah.
So I am gonna go the wooden, dull as hell prose and counterintuitive take. I'm going Megan McArdle. So we have Ann Coulter and Megan McArdle.
It's Megan, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wait, how did you just know? Oh, an homage to Donald Trump's appendage there. I see. Yeah. So how did you guys know it was Megan McArdle?
I saw it on Twitter when it happened.
You keep an eye on.
I might have been in the replies for that one.
How did you know?
I think I think I just saw other people referring to it secondhand. I was like, that's a Megan. That sounds like a Megan McArdle classic.
That's definitely a Megan McArdle.
The good thing about that was she said that before any of the real specifics came out about the allegations. So it's oh yeah, somebody has some sort of story, and then it came out. It's oh yeah, she knows some of the people that he partied with.
You mean before even
It was
Like,
before even the story.
It was before, like,
Yes,
he
she,
held
like, she
his
staked
hand
out-
over my mouth.
Megan, as usual, like staked out a position
Right.
based on no information and no attempt to gather information, and she like proudly staked out a position that was like, well, here are like all of my priors and no additional work.
Jesus, she is the worst. Okay.
I beat her in trivia once.
No. Why were you playing trivia with her?
I wasn't. It was like I lived in D.C. for a year back in like
That's the type
2000.
of shit that happens in
It's,
DC.
yeah, so you go to a bar with your friends to do trivia, and at the next table is Megan fucking McArdle. So anyway, we kicked her ass.
Nice.
That's good.
Left is best. Comment from Attorney Andrew. Definitely need a Jimmy Dore character from Mad Max universe speaking through an empty box in the shape of a laptop, asking why people don't support newly evolved carnivorous lizard people in their totally genuine quest to end wars. I don't understand the reference, but I buy it. Is it me, or is Crowder putting on a Tucker Carlson affect, says Bonapur. I can actually, you know what, I kind of see that in that video. I mean, I think they're all going to be putting on a Tucker Carlson affect because he's the king now.
Yeah, they're all,
He's like king fascist.
And they do that upspeak thing where they're kind of unsure about themselves because they should be, because most of the people are opposed to like what they're actually expressing.
Yeah.
Yeah, can we do that?
We can't do that. Brett Kavanaugh, you can't say good morning anymore. Can't say good morning anymore. Does Michael, and I'm going to throw this to everybody, think that the Taylor Swift headlines is related to an old Kanye beef, and how sad it is that our politics continues to be a reality show? Also, your thoughts on the end of the Conor fight. I didn't watch the Conor and Khabib fight, but I don't know. All I know about Taylor Swift, Matt, is you owe her an apology.
Well, I owe her personally an apology because she herself isn't a crypto fascist.
But you had a very strong theory that
And
she was a crypto fascist.
I stick by the contention that "Look What You Made Me Do" is like a fascist anthem, like distilled, just conceptually. Look what you made me do.
Because they are. It's
like
because you
tried to liberate yourself. That made me like.
That made me a fascist.
That made me vote for Bolsonaro.
Right. I buy it. What do you think? What do you think about Taylor Swift?
I don't know. I was on the crypto fascist train. There's a part of me that's like, maybe it's like sort of cynical media rehabilitation, because she does a lot of that. Yep. I feel like she's very clear about like maintaining her rep, and if she sees a blue wave, and she's like, all right, there's a blue wave coming, I'm getting on board. But you know, and I always thought her politics were pretty easy to guess because she was just like a incredibly wealthy suburban white person. But maybe I've been wrong about her. Like, I don't know. Maybe I've been wrong about her.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, it is like the statement was good, but she is endorsing like ultra right-wing Democrat. Like, she actually is endorsing like it's good suburban right-wing politics, just like minus the complete fascism and utter desire to eliminate human beings.
Chuck Schumer's strategy worked.
I know. We got Taylor Swift. I don't see anybody giving me any props.
Taylor
about
Swift
that.
needs to team up with Killer Mike.
For every
for
every legendary hip hop producer and rapper we lose, we will gain one Nashville superstar.
Oh God!
In the
I really
in
don't
the
want
suburbs
that trade. Oh, that's a bummer, dude. Speaking of crypto fascists, can we? Let's take. I wanted to do this with Alex Pareene. This is an old clip. This is from about 8 months ago. But I wanted to give him an opportunity to dunk on our old... Well, no, he's not an old friend. He's just one of the most dumb, toxic people in American life, Dave Rubin. This is Dave Rubin from 8 months ago in his Why Socialism Isn't Cool video. Starting with some old chestnuts about Martin Luther King Jr. And I'm wondering if you could maybe put this in the broader history of the right-wing grift, because this is the right-wing grift 2018.
Monday was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and as is the case with almost everything lately, virtually everyone on social media seemed to parse out MLK's words for whatever narrative they're currently pushing in our modern times. I saw articles on how MLK was the first environmentalist, how he was an ardent...
Did he say currently pushing in our modern
Currently
times?
pushing in our...
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Strike that one out.
Yeah.
All right, let's just index that one. I don't like to be a petted, but that one did deserve a note.
Feminist, a communist, a socialist, and much more. The one quote I tweeted of his is perhaps his most famous. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I believe this quote to be as relevant now as it was in the early 1960s, but for a whole other set of reasons. In the 1960s, MLK was fighting for equality under the law and equality of opportunity, 2 things that we should all absolutely believe in. Today, those who judge people by the color of their skin and not the content of their character are fighting not for equality, but for special treatment of some at the exclusion of others. This misguided principle, thinking you should treat someone differently because of their skin color, or thinking someone should believe what you think they should believe because of their skin color or any other immutable characteristic, is the essence of prejudice, which means to prejudge. This is the complete reverse of what MLK stood for, and sadly, this way of thinking has infected the modern left almost completely. This is why, like myself, so many of you find yourselves on the outside of a political bubble that you were once safely part of.
Now, this is challenging. Alex and I are both white men. We're both straight. However, I am going to have Alex speak on this first because I didn't know the proper oppression order to establish who got to tee off on that first. So just go with guest politeness. Alex, thoughts?
I feel like whenever I hear, because it's actually a pretty modern phenomenon for the people like that to adopt King and to try to co-opt him. That's actually happened pretty recently. And I always want to just ask, why do you think Ronald Reagan hated Martin Luther King? Why did Reagan hate him and oppose his political project?
Because he was not sufficiently into. I don't know. Actually, but you know why? Because Ronald Reagan was a fucking racist.
Because he was a fucking racist, yes. But it's also
because I don't like black people, even if he was a Republican.
They were clear-eyed at the time. At the time, they were the actual movement conservatives at the time were very clear-eyed about what King was actually doing.
Right.
They were very. They did when King said, I just want my kids to be judged by their character and not their skin color. The right was like, that's not all you want. They were like, we know you want an upending of the existing order.
Right.
And so they opposed him and they killed him. So they knew what his program was then. And the right institutionally carried that memory up through the 80s when they were still fighting making making a holiday, giving him a holiday, and then now it's just again the bullshit artists have only been fed their own bullshit for a generation. So he is that video is not meant to convince anyone who did not grow up on a diet of bullshit.
Right.
Because if you know anything about anything, you're like, oh, what is he talking about? But if you have only been just simmering in this bullshit for years, and you're like, yeah,
or a couple of weeks, and,
yeah,
and your checks depend on it.
Right.
That would be a funny new character though. Ronald Reagan, an indignant Ronald Reagan comes back. He's like, "This gay airhead is wrong. we hated him for
King.
good goddamn reasons.
He was a communist.
King was a communist, and he opposed the war."
If you read his Riverside address, where he opposed the invasion of Vietnam, it was a far-reaching critique of U.S. imperialism that connected the struggles of the Viet Cong with racial hierarchies in the United States, which is why we hated him, you goddamn gay fool.
In fact, we killed him for treason.
We assassinated him and Huey P. Newton for a reason. I suppose in another couple of years, he'll say that the Black Panthers were advocates of libertarianism. Fuck all of you. You have no respect for your lineage. This is just a quote. I want to pull this up because this is actually pretty specific though. Capitalism has brought about a system that takes necessities from the masses and gives luxury to the classes, King wrote in a letter to Scott in 1952. He also echoed the sentiment 15 years later in his last book, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? Capitalism has often left a gap of superfluous wealth and abject poverty and has created conditions permitting necessities to be taken from the many to give luxuries to the few. This is from the Riverside Address. When machines and computers, profit motivated, and property rights are considered more important than people, the giant triplets of racism, materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered. Which all sounds like what he was really saying, which was like, you can't have a free exchange in a college campus anymore. It's the oppression Olympics.
The real problem is grievance studies.
Yeah. If you think about it, a lot of people voted for Donald Trump. They might not like everything he said, but they appreciate that he's not politically correct.
But everyone should just read like where do we go from here? Because if the only thing you know is the apoliticized version of Martin Luther King, like you're just like, oh, this guy had an agenda that is like.
The problem is that welfare too often becomes dependency. Why do we have poverty? Listen to the Migos album. Stir fries.
As Dr. King wrote, the real cause of racial inequity is too many young men buying gold chains.
Yeah, that's right.
And not studying hard enough.
There were two catastrophes that happened for the black community. The Civil Rights Act, which had unintended consequences of destroying our families, and Sam Cooke undulating on stage.
Why do they say that word if you can't say it?
Either we all don't say the word or everyone says the word. It's called judging people by the content of their character.
That's prejudice.
Prejudge.
In this modern world in which we're currently living these days, as Dr.
Currently in our modern world.
That's like the old Ed Wood, like, many of us are interested in the future, for that is where we will spend the rest of our lives.
Begin the Riverside Address by noting that currently many of us in our modern world have an ideological agenda.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. And
If you want to support Free Speech TV on YouTube, go to our Patreon page.
I just want to hear that part again, actually.
Monday was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and as is the case with almost everything lately, virtually everyone on social media seemed to parse out MLK's words for whatever narrative they're currently pushing in our modern time.
That's a scripted segment, too.
Yeah,
that's what's funny about it. Yeah.
Like he wrote that. He like wrote that down.
He's looking at that in a teleprompter.
And it's, yeah.
He hasn't been taught, if you took an English class, you've been taught, remove superfluous clauses.
I was reflecting on the past where things have happened before the time that is present.
What happened in the past in days gone by?
The left fought for equity, but now it's an oppression Olympics. Let's do our Gulag segment, which we have moved to the post game. And have you heard it? Why did Nikki Haley quit? Are she and Trump not sleeping together anymore? Boom! Michael Wolff gossip.
Michael Wolff classic.
Michael, that was amazing.
She had so I only saw this headline and I didn't actually investigate any further, but she was taking a bunch of private plane trips and someone referred it for an investigation. But other Trump veterans have boy, they stayed on a lot longer after the private plane trips came.
Do you start to think that all it matters is whether or not they've got their cut or not? You can engage in any type of corruptive practices imaginable, but if we're not getting a kickback from this,
right? Yeah,
get the fuck out.
What's in this for us, Nikki?
Yeah. Well, that was what the idea with Trump, and when he finally turned on some of these people was he doesn't like other people getting rich off his name.
Right.
He's like, you didn't no, I get rich doing things. You don't get to get rich off of my name.
I break the monuments clause.
But Haley has never she's pretty young and she never got rich in the private sector before she went into being horrible in office.
Right.
So her like actual net worth is minuscule compared to the people she's in this administration with. So she either like she's just taking kickbacks and bribes, or she's quitting government to take kickbacks and bribes
more quickly.
Yes.
Fair. So this is vintage Nikki Haley though, and again, the serious point too about this is also that she gets called a moderate.
Yeah, she's the moderate.
What? Yeah. What? Apparently that means like if you have not publicly mocked a sexual assault victim, you're a moderate.
I mean, she's a lady.
Yeah. Women are moderate unless it's their periods. Am I right? Am I right? This is Nikki Haley last year fear-mongering about Iran. And, people should know, again, that this extremism, this endless lying, this is Republican and a lot of Democrats' view.
By Houthi rebels in Yemen into Saudi Arabia.
These are the recovered pieces of a missile fired by Houthi militants from Yemen into Saudi Arabia. The missile's intended target was the civilian airport in Riyadh, through which tens of thousands of passengers travel each day. I repeat, the missile was used to attack an international civilian airport in a G20 country. Just imagine if this missile had been launched at Dulles Airport or JFK, or the airports in Paris, London, or Berlin. That's what we're talking about here. That's what Iran is actively supporting.
So no UN investigation definitely did not confirm that, and the Houthi rebels had way less support from Iran until the Saudis and the Emirates began a campaign of indiscriminate mass murder.
Right.
Any additional thoughts?
I mean, there are people who long for someone like Nikki Haley to like be the new face of the Republican Party because she's like just less uncouth than Trump.
That's it.
But she will. That performance was, I will lie us into war because I want to. That's what that performance is, and it's,
that's it.
That's it. I will just say whatever I will flagrantly ignore like actual truth and in the service of an agenda of more bloodshed in the Middle East.
Period.
So,
that's another one where like clearly they were both. I mean, I don't think there's a single Republican administration that wouldn't be doing the same catastrophic approach to Iran.
No, and that was whenever there are real tangible ways in which Trump is worse than alternatives, but if you want to talk about like what his administration is doing on a foreign policy front, like there's really almost nothing that is appreciably different from what Marco Rubio or Jeb Bush would have done.
Marco Rubio
might have been like we might have been
worse.
We might have been dropping bombs by now. Like
yes, absolutely. We were gonna send some to the gulag, but Matt left and didn't play the music. You're calling from a 269 area code. We'll play the music when Matt gets back. Right in the middle.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, 269. Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you.
Okay. This is okay. Isha, I'm calling from the Upper West Side.
Hi, Isha.
Hi. Okay. So I'll try to be quick. To answer Alex's question about the Democratic strategist, earlier this year, like I was speaking to this Democratic pollster who's hired by Michael Bloomberg and all these, like, not Bloomberg, I'm sorry, Mayor de Blasio.
Uh-huh.
And so basically, like she was like, oh, I only poll people like who are 35 and over because they're likely voters. And the concept that really baffled her is the ability to get non-likely voters into the polls. So there are these like extremely uncreative people who just kind of have algorithms in their mind, and that's it.
Yeah. I 100%. Thanks for the call, Isha.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's good insight actually, and I think it's exactly that. It's a self-reinforcing thing too, because they only talk to older voters because they know only older voters vote, and then literally no one is speaking to what younger voters want, and they're like, why aren't you voting?
I have no doubt, and I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm not saying that it could happen overnight, but I think if you if you put in the legwork to convince younger voters and, that you're going to do some type of like mass debt forgiveness package.
Oh my God, yeah.
They would vote.
Yeah,
period.
I think that's the simplest answer, and no one wants to hear it, but it is like the simplest answer is you promise to give them something that will make their lives materially better, and they'll come out, because it would be insane for them not to. And I feel like the same economists who told Barack Obama not to brag about a tax cut, if you like ask them, well, why would people not come out and vote for someone who promised to eliminate their debt? Like why wouldn't everyone come out to do that?
No, young people want to hear West Wing, warmed over West Wing speeches. You're calling from a 407 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? 407. Hello? Are you there?
Hi, Michael. It's Rodrigo, the Brazilian from New Jersey.
Hey, Rodrigo. How you doing, man? You all right?
Oh, I had a pretty big scare this Saturday, but other than that, we're good.
Yeah, I know. That was very close. He almost literally got the 50% in the first round. We're going to play a Bernie clip about it in a second. Any thoughts? I mean, do you think they can pull together and actually stave this off?
I think they can. I think Ciro Gomez has already come out in favor of Haddad, and Haddad plus Ciro already gets you all the votes that you need to equalize it, and really it's just going to be about the undecided and blank votes. I still think that Bolsonaro's rejection rate is too high to win, but it's a much closer prediction than what it should have been, really.
Yeah. I mean, I'm actually hearing it's a really hard road. I want to believe what you're saying. We're going to have Alberto Maida on again, but I don't think Gomes alone equalizes it, because I think like Haddad got 28%, Gomes got, what was it, 13%, and Bolsonaro was at 45%. And then Alckmin has said they're going to stay neutral, although they are aligning with the PT in some local races. And then I don't know the rest. I don't know if the rest of them even matter, right? Because they got, Marina Silva got like 1%, and Bolos got 0.5%. Obviously, he'll support Haddad, but yeah, I hope, man. There's a lot riding on that. I mean,
but what I actually called in was with there were kind of two topics I want to talk about, but I know that you're loose on time.
Yeah, we're
so
a little.
Yeah,
pick one if you can, because we have to jump in a minute.
So I'm going to go with I think the most pertinent one, which is why the Brazilian populace is ambivalent to the resurgent call for dictatorship.
Yeah.
Because you would think that you would say the word dictatorship, and any democracy would automatically just jump and outright reject the person. But the Brazilian dictatorship had very specific things that happened during it that made it a lot, that differentiated a lot from even the other South American ones.
Yeah.
And just a couple of factoids as to why the Brazilian economic cycle happened during it that helped people get rich. The state gave really quickly took control of all media and didn't allow televised the killings, didn't allow televised the legislation that allowed them to take power, utilized sports and popular culture to distract the population 24/7. This is the interesting one that other Latin Americans didn't really do, which is that the veneer of democracy was still kept. So even though they changed the voting systems completely, they would still call themselves presidents and maintain the institution of executive powers and legislative and Congress and everything, including allowing an opposition party. And even though the opposition party, as Alberto Palmeiras was the opposition of the yes, it was still kind of there. And this led people to sometimes not even know that a dictatorship was in place, because I know people who actually think that.
That makes a lot of sense. And I also think that this we talked about before, but just this generalized, not getting specific about corruption and making distinctions, that what they did was by having this corruption probe, which basically targeted Workers' Party, was just leveraged by the right, and then perfectly set up for, not even by them, because they're still traditional political parties, but some asshole who's been on the margins for a long time saying awful, despicable things, and then just run the Trump campaign. Except he is actually more ideologically coherent than Trump, as far as I can see. He's less all over the place. He's no, I'm a fascist. That's my politics. not just like a right-wing authoritarian scumbag. All right, thanks for the call, man. Appreciate it. Last call tonight. Let's end with Brazil. Bernie Sanders gave, I mean, this type of thing, like, this is definitely why Bernie Sanders remains my first choice. He talks about the global rise of authoritarianism, Bolsonaro, and of course last week we played that clip that his team put out with Danny Glover and Mark Weisbrot talking about the lawfare coup against Dilma Rousseff and political imprisonment of Lula.
All around the world, in Europe, in Russia, in the Middle East, in Asia, Latin America, and elsewhere, we are seeing movements led by demagogues who exploit people's fears, prejudices, and grievances to gain and hold on to power. Just this past weekend, in Brazil's presidential election, right-wing leader Jair Bolsonaro, who has been called the Donald Trump of Brazil.
I feel for you, man. right with you.
Made a very strong showing in the first round of voting, coming up just short of the 50% he needed for victory. Bolsonaro has a long record of attacks against immigrants, minorities, women, against LGBT people. Bolsonaro, who has said he loves Donald Trump, has praised Brazil's former military dictatorship and has said, among other things, that in order to deal with crime, police should simply be allowed to shoot more criminals. This is the person who may soon lead the world's 5th most populous country and its 9th largest economy. Meanwhile, at the same time, Brazil's most popular politician, former President Lula da Silva, is imprisoned on highly questionable charges and prevented from running again despite polls that showed that he was in first place.
I like how that issue warned.
Yeah, that got the finger.
They got the finger.
That got the
Lula
finger, yeah.
would have won.
Yes,
Not
yeah.
the only one who would have won, you dumb fucks.
Yeah.
Thoughts about that?
It's actually I read that speech, but I hadn't seen him give it. But it's actually like refreshing to just be like, oh, someone's actually talking about this clearly. Again, this is one of his political gifts, is that he just sort of talks about these things in a way that's like very direct and clear, and you're like, oh, I'm glad that any significant American political figure is just saying it.
Yeah. No, I agree. And also, I just would add, maybe it's my romantic socialist tendencies, but like that solidarity and recognizing that both for very practical reasons that actually Brazil really matters. And, what drives me crazy is like Steve Bannon actually gets it, and people he gets it. Why do you think he's jetting around Europe, Brazil, and Australia? He wants a synthesized global fascist moment.
Right.
There's no time to think otherwise. And, you fuse that with the fact that now Lula is the most prominent political prisoner in the world. Seems like that should be pretty high on the docket for people. Alex, thanks a million.
Yeah, man. Thanks. It was fun.
It was always fun. I hope you'll come back again soon. And I know you're working on some long form.
Yeah, I've got a couple. I haven't published anything in a little while, but I've got a couple things you'll be seeing from me pretty soon. So keep your eyes out.
It's gonna be like, Alex was tired of the ideological rigidity of the left. You ever do that? You ever think like, God damn, I just want to go out tonight and have a beer? Yeah. Maybe I should become a right wing.
Yeah, I think everyone in my line of work thinks that every now and then. Yeah.
This week in illicit history of Patrice Lumumba, the multi-party civil war in the Democratic Republic of Congo with Milton Alamati. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, David. Thank you, David. Thanks each and every one of you. Keep spreading the word. Go to our YouTube page. We're still building that out at just shy of our first 8,000 subscribers. Thanks, everybody.